When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the ceiling, too white, too bright, humming faintly with the sound of air conditioning. The second thing I noticed was the weight on my left hand. A ring. Thick, gold, unfamiliar. I tried to speak. Maybe to call for someone, maybe to ask what was happening, but no sound came out. Just a breath trapped in my throat. Panic rose in my chest like a storm tide. I touched my neck, then the sheets. Satin. Hotel satin. Not my bed. Not my room. Then I saw him. A man sitting in the chair by the window. His head bowed into his hands. A suit jacket hung on the backrest, crisp, expensive. I didn't know his name. But on the side table beside him, I saw 2 champagne glasses, an open folder, and a photograph of him and me. Smiling. Standing together. My hand on his chest. A white dress. I remember whispering or trying to. What happened? He looked up. His eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Then his voice came, calm but trembling beneath the surface. You're awake. Thank God. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. Only a dry croak escaped. He stood, adjusting his cufflinks, his every movement deliberate, rehearsed. You should rest. You were dehydrated. The doctor said you fainted from exhaustion. I blinked hard. My mind searched for the last thing I remembered. The conference. The presentation. Applause, cameras, lights. I was in another city for work, 3 days away from home. I'd gone to my room after dinner, feeling dizzy, thinking I'd just lie down for a minute. Then nothing. Now I was here, with a stranger who wore the calm mask of someone used to public scrutiny. On the bedside table, next to the photo, lay a document stamped with an official seal. Marriage certificate. My name. His name. I tried to speak again, pushing air through the tightness in my throat. The sound came out cracked, desperate. This isn't real. He looked away. It is for now. Normal life/setup. Before that morning, my life had been simple, quiet, structured. I was 34, a marketing manager for a mid-size health company. Not glamorous but steady. My life revolved around schedules and checklists. The morning coffee at exactly 7:15, the daily walk with my neighbor's dog, the long calls with my younger sister Nina, who lived 2 states away. Work had always been my anchor. My boss trusted me with big presentations like the one that took me to Chicago that week. It was supposed to be the highlight of my year. A corporate merger pitch in front of national partners. I'd prepared for months, living on caffeine and notes scribbled in the margins of PowerPoint slides. The night before the presentation, I'd looked at myself in the hotel mirror. Hair neatly tied, lipstick precise, and whispered, "You're ready, Clara." I didn't know that within 24 hours, I'd wake up in that same hotel, voiceless and legally bound to a stranger. Back home, people knew me as reserved but reliable. I wasn't the woman to get drunk at parties or flirt with danger. My parents used to tease me for being too cautious. My last serious relationship had ended 3 years ago. He said I was married to my work, not him. Maybe he was right. And the man in that chair, the one who now said we were married, I'd seen his face before. Not in person but on TV. He was that man, Daniel Hartwell, the young senator everyone said would be president someday. Charismatic. Brilliant. Untouchable. I'd seen his campaign ad once, his voice promising integrity above all. Integrity. The word rang like irony now. He poured a glass of water, brought it to me carefully. You were found in the hallway outside the banquet room. You collapsed. My team thought it best to move you somewhere private. Private. The word made my stomach turn. Why? My throat burned with every word. Why married? He paused, jaw tightening. It was a misunderstanding that escalated. There were photos. People assumed something inappropriate happened. My career. I stared at him. So you decided to marry me? He didn't flinch. It was the cleanest way to contain the situation. I was protecting both of us. I tried to laugh, but the sound came out like a gasp. You mean you were protecting yourself? He sighed, rubbing his temples. My communications team is handling everything. It will blow over soon. You'll be taken care of. Taken care of. That phrase stayed with me long after he left the room. The next day, I woke to the sound of the city outside, car horns, the hum of morning traffic. My voice had returned slightly, though it was thin and raspy. My phone was gone. My suitcase too. Only a new set of clothes, a cream blouse and skirt, waited on the chair with a note in neat handwriting. For your comfort. I sat there, staring at the ring on my hand. I wanted to tear it off, but something in me, a strange, quiet survival instinct, said to wait. At breakfast, he appeared again, perfectly composed in a navy suit. The table was already set. Toast, eggs, coffee. A picture of normalcy. Clara, he said softly, we'll have to make a brief appearance together today. Just for optics. Optics, I repeated, my voice still shaky. What happens when the optics change? He hesitated, then smiled, the kind of smile politicians use when they're cornered. Then we make a quiet annulment. You'll be compensated generously. A clean slate. I stared at him, my coffee untouched. You do realize this is kidnapping in slow motion? Don't be dramatic. The calmness in his tone infuriated me. But deep down, beneath the shock, beneath the fear, another emotion stirred, curiosity. What kind of man would risk everything just to control a story? And what kind of woman would I become if I let him? That was the morning I decided I wouldn't be silent anymore, even if my voice still trembled when it came. The first time I realized how deep the deception ran was 2 days later, when a stranger called me Mrs. Hartwell. We were in the hotel lobby, cameras flashing discreetly behind decorative plants, staff smiling too politely. Daniel kept a gentle hand on my back, guiding me toward the car like we'd rehearsed it. I'd learned to smile for the pictures, to nod when asked how we met, to say, we're keeping things private for now. Every part of it felt like acting. Except I hadn't auditioned for this role. But when the driver opened the door and said, "Congratulations again, Mrs. Hartwell," I froze. The name hit me like a slap. Not just because it wasn't mine, but because of the way Daniel looked at me afterward. Calm. Expectant. As if waiting to see whether I'd break character. That night, back in the suite, I pretended to sleep while his phone buzzed endlessly. His voice, low and clipped, carried through the adjoining room. Yes, it's contained. No, she's not talking. Yes, legal's drafting it. Tell the press she's a consultant. That's all they need to know. Contained. Not talking. He hung up, exhaled slowly, then poured himself a drink. Through the half-open door, I could see him standing by the window, staring out at the skyline, the city lights reflecting on his watch. For a moment he looked almost human. Tired. Lonely. And I wondered if he even remembered what honesty felt like. I waited until the suite went quiet before I moved. The folder from the night I woke up was still in the drawer of the side table. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were 3 documents. The marriage certificate, a non-disclosure agreement with my signature, and a bank deposit slip for $250,000. My name was signed in careful, looping letters. It looked like my handwriting, but not quite. Too neat. Too certain. I pressed my thumb over the signature, tracing it again and again. I hadn't written it. I knew I hadn't. That was the moment I stopped being confused and started getting angry. The next morning I tried calling Nina, my sister, from the hotel phone, but the line cut after 1 ring. When I asked the front desk, the clerk smiled politely and said, "All calls must go through Mr. Hartwell's assistant for security reasons." Security. I was beginning to understand how cages could be built with politeness and protocol instead of bars. By the 3rd day, I started observing the routine. The same assistant, the same guards, the same rehearsed smiles. Daniel's public life was a performance, and I'd been written in as a prop. But I wasn't going to play it quietly. That evening, I confronted him in the suite. "Tell me the truth," I said, my voice rough but steady. "What really happened that night?" He set his phone down. "You fainted outside the banquet. A journalist followed me to the hallway, saw me with you unconscious. They took photos. My team panicked. They thought the story would destroy my campaign. So you married me? I didn't have a choice." "Yes, Daniel. You did. You could have told the truth." He sighed, a flicker of frustration in his eyes. The truth doesn't survive politics. Something in his tone, that quiet conviction, chilled me more than the lie itself. That night I sat in the bathroom, the only place without cameras, and whispered into the mirror until my voice came back. "My name is Clara Evans. I am not his wife." Over and over again like a prayer. A week later we returned to Washington. Daniel's townhouse was large but empty, like a stage set built for appearances. He'd arranged a press statement, smiling at my side as flashbulbs popped. I wore a beige dress chosen by his stylist. Neutral, elegant, non-threatening, they'd said. When it was over, I excused myself and locked myself in the guest room. That's when I found the envelope. Tucked inside the bedside drawer was a stack of documents marked confidential. Most were campaign strategy memos, but one caught my eye. A legal brief titled Contingency Marriage Agreement. The first line made my stomach drop. "Subject agrees to the temporary union with Senator Daniel Hartwell for the purpose of mitigating reputational risk following the incident of October 7th. Subject. That was me. I skimmed the rest. It detailed my supposed consent, financial compensation, a 3-month confidentiality term, and an optional extension pending political developments. There it was, in writing. I was a calculated cover story. I felt something in me snap, not loudly but quietly, like a thread stretched too thin. I walked into his office holding the document. "You forged this." He didn't even look up from his laptop. "It's standard crisis protocol." "Crisis protocol? You drugged me, Daniel. You forged my signature. You stole my name." He looked at me finally, eyes hard. "Careful. Words like that have consequences. So does deceit." We stood there in silence, two strangers pretending to be spouses. Then softly he said, "If you go public, Clara, you won't just ruin me. You'll ruin yourself. They'll call you unstable. A gold digger. The woman who begged a senator to marry her. The internet will eat you alive." And I believed him because I'd seen it happen before. For the first time, I understood how women disappeared not through violence but through reputation. That night, I wrote an email to Nina using a new Gmail address, hoping she'd see it before it was deleted. I told her everything: the hotel, the documents, the lies. 3 days later, she replied, "Leave. Don't wait for justice. Just get out." But running wasn't easy when your entire life had been erased. My credit cards had been frozen. My work account deactivated, pending review. HR said they were looking into potential misconduct at the conference. Daniel's team was thorough. They'd made sure I couldn't move without their permission. Yet they underestimated one thing: I still had my mind. And my memory. I started recording everything. Voice memos hidden in my phone case. Notes written in code. Screenshots emailed to myself under fake names. If you wanted a perfect narrative, I'd be the crack in it. The turning point came one evening when I overheard a conversation between Daniel and his chief of staff. They were discussing campaign donors, but then I heard my name. "She's asking questions," the aide said. "Too many. Do you want us to handle it?" "Not yet," Daniel replied. "Let her think she's free. The quieter she goes, the safer we are." That was the night I decided I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. The next morning, I looked him straight in the eye at breakfast. "I want an annulment." He stirred his coffee without looking up. "In time." "No. Now." He smiled faintly. "You think you can challenge me, Clara? Go ahead. But remember, you're the one who signed the papers." I met his gaze and said, "Then I'll show the world how you made me sign them." His hand froze midair, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. The morning after I told him I'd show the world, I woke up before the sun and sat on the cool hardwood floor of the guest room. I pressed my back to the wall and listened to the quiet click of the thermostat. For the first time since the hotel, my breathing felt even. Fear had sharpened into something steadier in tint. I made a list. Not a dramatic list, a practical one, the kind I'd make before a big presentation. First, proof of my condition that night. Second, proof I couldn't consent. Third, proof of forgery. Fourth, proof of motive. Fifth, witnesses. I ate dry toast to settle my stomach and rinsed the ring under the tap, watching water beat against the gold. It was heavy for its size, too bright in the morning light, like it wanted attention. I slid it back on. Not because I accepted it, because it could be evidence too. Daniel left for the hill before 7, cologne hanging in the air like a bruise. As the front door shut, I counted to 50. Then I moved. His townhouse had neat rules. Nothing on counters, no mail left out, no dishes drying by the sink. But there were drawers, and drawers told stories. I started in the office, not rummaging like a burglar but reading like a librarian. A locked file box yielded nothing. The lock was simple, the contents expected. Donor lists, event calendars, a copy of a code of ethics printed on thick paper. I smiled at the irony. The printer tray held the real clue. A faint gray residue on the rollers, the kind left by carbon paper or pressure when documents are traced. I photographed it and placed a fresh sheet in the tray. If anything else got printed, I'd see the impression. Next, the guest room closet. On the top shelf, a plain shoebox with a rubber band around it. Inside, a jumble of things that didn't belong to him: hotel keycards, security badges, a lanyard from the conference I presented at, and a small black device with a micro USB port. A portable scanner. I turned it over, noting a fleck of glitter lodged in the seam, the same fine glitter I remembered from the banquet table's centerpieces. I photographed everything, sealed the box, and slid it back. At 9, I took a risk and slipped out the back gate. The townhome's brick alley smelled like old leaves and rain. I walked fast without looking over my shoulder, feeling the ring tap-tap against my knuckle. The metro was full of people rehearsing their own performances. Interns with lanyards, staffers with tote bags, a woman in scrubs asleep against the window. No one looked at me. In a city this busy, invisibility was a kind of mercy. I got off near the hotel from that night. The lobby smelled the same, lemons and floor polish, and a pianist practiced the same 3 chords on a small black piano near the bar. I stood at the desk and asked for the duty manager, my hands folded, my voice calm. "Good morning," I said when she arrived. "I need to request a copy of the incident report for a medical emergency in your banquet hallway last Thursday." I was the guest. She hesitated, polite smile flickering. "We typically share those with the party who filed the report, or with law enforcement." "I understand." I slid my business card, the one I kept hidden in the lining of my wallet, across the counter. I was the party. My blood pressure crashed. "Someone called your house doctor." I kept my eyes steady. "If you can't release it, could you at least confirm whether your staff transported me to a private room, or if anyone accompanied me?" Her gaze softened. She was a woman in her 50s, silver hair pulled neatly back. "I remember that night," she said. "You were alone in the hallway. A gentleman found you and called for help." She checked the screen. "Our EMT notes indicate you were non-responsive for several minutes, severely dehydrated. We encouraged hospital transfer, but the gentleman declined on your behalf, stating he was your spouse." "I didn't have a spouse," I said, so softly that the words felt like a secret I was returning to its owner. She pressed her lips together. "I can give you the non-medical log entry," she said finally. "Names redacted." She printed a single sheet that buzzed warm in my hands. Under Observer, someone had written, "Male mid-30s, navy suit, congressional pin." Thank you, I said. The pianist finally settled on a melody. For the first time in days, my shoulders dropped. I stepped back into the sunlight and dialed a number from memory. The only number I'd once labeled break glass. My old mentor, Maya, had gone from communications director to attorney after a public scandal broke her heart and rebuilt her spine. If anyone knew how to peel truth out of a powerful image, it was her. She answered on the second ring. Clara. Hearing my name in her voice felt like home. I told her everything without the tremble I'd feared. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a beat of silence, the kind of silence where people make choices. You're not crazy, she said finally. And you're not alone. Come to my office. Now. Her office smelled like paper and coffee. A plant leaned toward the window's winter light. Maya hugged me and then pulled back to examine me like a mother might inspect a scraped knee. You look smaller, she said. But you're standing. That matters. I laid out the documents I'd collected, each one a breadcrumb in a forest he'd tried to set on fire. Maya scanned them, her finger landing on the phrase contingency marriage agreement. Obscene, she murmured. But useful. She swiveled to her keyboard. We need 4 things. A sworn affidavit from the hotel staff or EMT documenting your condition. A medical opinion on your incapacity to consent. A forensic handwriting analysis on the signatures. And a timeline tying their motive to a specific media threat. If we can show pattern and intent, not just panic, it changes everything. I can get the EMT, I said. And the doctor. Maya tilted her head. You think the doctor will talk? He will if he remembers he never saw me, I replied. There was no doctor. Just a house medic. And Daniel's team made decisions they weren't entitled to make. She nodded slowly. You've always been precise, Clara. Precision wins cases. She printed a letter on firm stationery. To whom it may concern, I represent Miss Clara Evans. The official tone soothed some feral part of me. Representation, the first warmth I'd felt since the ring. Before I left, Maya placed a small digital recorder in my palm. If he admits anything, I want it. But don't provoke. Safety first. On my way back to the metro, I bought a cheap burner phone from a corner shop with cash from the emergency bill I'd tucked into my shoe. It felt like a relic of an older version of me, the Girl Scout who planned for the worst. I texted a single number. Nina, I'm okay. I have a lawyer. She replied in seconds. I'll come. Say the word. Not yet, I typed. Soon. When I returned to the townhouse, the front door was unlocked. Inside, Daniel's voice was low and controlled, coming from the kitchen. He ended the call when he saw me and leaned against the counter. Sleeves rolled to the elbow like a magazine spread. He looked like someone's idea of safety. Busy day? He asked. Productive, I said, setting my bag down with deliberate calm. I visited the hotel. He stilled. Why? To thank them, I said. And to get the non-medical incident report. The smallest crack showed in his expression. You're making this ugly, Clara. It was already ugly, I replied. I'm making it honest. He stepped closer, and for a heartbeat I smelled his aftershave, cedar and something metallic. Let me be clear, he said quietly. You will regret this. The world is not kind to women who refuse scripts. I met his gaze without blinking. Then I'll write my own. We stared at each other. A mirror neither of us liked. His jaw flexed. Then he smiled, that practiced tilt of lips strangers mistook for warmth. Dinner at 8, he said lightly. My staff will be here. Be ready. Of course, I said. I have something to share with them too. After he went upstairs, I slipped into the office and checked the printer tray. A fresh page now bore the faintest ghost of words pressed through. Narrative, October 7th, Private Union. I photographed it, heart steady. At 7:30, the house filled with the hushed orchestra of a campaign at rest. Coats brushed, chairs slid, glasses clinked. The comms director, Elise, Flawless bob flats made to look like heels, greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So good to finally sit with you, Clara," she said. "We've been working overtime to make sure this transition is smooth." "For whom?" I asked. "For everyone," she said. We sat at the long table. I held my water glass by its stem to keep my hands from shaking. Daniel took the head of the table. The conversation was normal to the point of absurdity: polling numbers, a breakfast with veterans, a ribbon cutting. Finally, Elise turned to me. "Your background is comms, right? We'd love your help shaping the How We Met story. Human but discreet." "I have another story in mind," I said. I placed the incident log in the middle of the table and slid it toward her. Then the photograph of the printer impression. Then the portable scanner which I'd pulled from the shoebox on my way down. Silence landed like a stone dropped in a pond. Elise didn't touch the papers. She looked at Daniel first. He didn't look back. "You're making a mistake," she said to me softly. It sounded almost like regret. "No," I said. "I'm correcting one." Daniel's hand closed around his fork like a gavel. "Everyone out," he said, quiet as winter. "Now." Chairs scraped. Doors whispered. When it was just us, he exhaled through his nose, a silent laugh without humor. "Do you think you know this game?" he asked. "You think truth wins because it's true?" "I think truth wins because it refuses to die," I said. "And because people like Maya know how to feed it." He flinched at the name. It was small, but I saw it. "You hired counsel," he said flatly. "Yes." "For what?" "For the annulment. For the forgery. For the false statements to my employer. For coercion. For whatever comes next." For the first time, he looked tired in front of me. Not stage tired, human tired. He pinched the bridge of his nose, and for a second, I saw a boy who'd learned early that control kept love in the room. "Clara," he said, almost gentle, "if you go public, they will tear you apart." "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not. Maybe they'll watch a woman tell a quiet story with receipts. Maybe they'll remember their sisters and their daughters. Maybe they'll hear the ring hitting the table and know what it costs to return something that was never yours." I slid the ring off and set it down between us. The sound was small and clean. He stared at it. The kitchen clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a siren started and faded. "You won't do it," he said finally. "You care too much about dignity." "You're right," I said, standing. "That's why I'll do it carefully." I left him with the ring and the silence. Upstairs, behind the locked bathroom door, I pulled out Maya's recorder and pressed stop. The red light winked, and I exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. I listened back to my own voice. Steady, lower than usual, threaded with steel. "My name is Clara Evans," I thought. "I am not his wife. I am a witness." Tomorrow, Maya and I would meet the hotel EMT and a private handwriting examiner at her office. She drafted a notice to Daniel's counsel and a request for preservation of evidence: hotel cameras, elevator logs, the lobby footage the pianist might have accidentally captured on his phone. We would move with patience, not rage. I turned off the light and pressed my palm to the cool tile. In the darkness, a truth rose up like a shoreline at dawn. Power wasn't the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it was the quiet one that didn't blink. The next morning, the air outside felt sharper, the kind that carries the smell of frost and headlines. I dressed in plain black slacks and a gray coat. Nothing fancy. I didn't want to look like a scandal. I wanted to look like someone telling the truth. Maya met me at the cafe across from her office, a stack of folders under her arm, and that expression she wore when she smelled victory brewing. "You slept?" she asked. "Barely," I admitted. "But enough to remember my own name." She smiled. "Then we're ahead of him already." By noon, she'd filed a preliminary injunction preventing Daniel's team from destroying or altering any evidence related to our union. The legal words felt cold and technical, but underneath them pulsed something alive: accountability. When she pressed send, I realized my hands were trembling. She covered them with hers. "He'll come at you hard," she said. "But remember, bullies lose power when they can't predict your silence." That evening, the news cycle shifted. A local journalist, young, hungry, and too curious for her own safety, published a brief article citing unverified documents about Senator Hartwell's private marriage agreement. It didn't name me, but the description was close enough that friends started texting. "Clara, is this you? Are you okay? What's happening?" Daniel called an hour later. His voice was calm, but underneath I could hear the steel. "Did you leak it?" "No," I said truthfully. "But I'm not sorry it's out." He sighed. "You don't understand what this will do." "I understand perfectly. You built a life on lies, and now the truth wants rent." He went quiet. Then, almost softly, "You think you're the victim here." "No," I said. "I'm the witness. Victims stay silent." Before he could answer, I hung up. 2 days later, the networks ran with the story. Senator's secret marriage raises questions about consent and cover-up. Anonymous source alleges forged documents. Crisis or conspiracy? Inside the Hartwell scandal. It was everywhere, not because of me, but because people smelled hypocrisy in a man who had built his brand on integrity. And in this city, hypocrisy was blood in the water. Maya and I sat in her office watching the coverage. "They'll send someone to manage you," she said, eyes still on the screen. "A handler, maybe a PR consultant. Don't speak to them." "I won't," I said, though the idea of being handled again almost made me laugh. An hour later, there was a knock at the office door. A tall woman in a navy coat stepped in, crisp and polite. "Miss Evans? I'm from Senator Hartwell's legal team." Maya's tone turned to steel. "She has representation." The woman gave a small, practiced smile. "Then I'll be brief. The senator wishes to resolve this privately. An annulment sealed. You'll receive a statement clearing your name and a financial settlement. Confidentiality required, of course." I looked her straight in the eye. "You think silence can still be bought?" She hesitated, then placed a folder on the desk. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "I believe you." Then she left. Inside the folder was the annulment. Pre-signed, notarized, dated that morning. No money this time. Just freedom. Maya studied it carefully. "He's cutting his losses. This is the cleanest retreat you'll ever get from someone like him." "And the press?" I asked. "Already moving on to the next scandal," she said. "They always do." But not everyone moved on. 2 nights later, as I walked home through the quiet residential streets, a woman caught up to me near the corner. She was younger, maybe mid-20s, in a gray coat and sneakers. She looked nervous. "Miss Evans," she said. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't bother you. I used to work on his staff." I stopped. "His staff?" She nodded. "In communications. 2 years ago. I left after something similar happened. Different details. Same damage." For a moment, the streetlights hummed between us. She continued. "He's done this before. The team covers it up every time. You were the first to make noise." My stomach sank. "Do you have proof?" She opened her phone and showed me emails, internal messages discussing containment and replacement narratives. One even referenced controlled engagement scenario, the same phrase I'd seen in the fake marriage file. "Why bring this to me?" I asked. "Because no one believes women like us until there's more than one." Her voice shook slightly. I reached for her hand and squeezed it. "Thank you." She smiled faintly. "You gave me courage. I just wanted you to know." When she walked away, I stood there under the streetlight for a long time, the cold air stinging my eyes. Courage. That word used to feel heavy. Now it felt like breath. The following morning, Maya and I met with a journalist, the same one who'd broken the first story. Her name was Leah, and she looked barely old enough to rent a car, but her questions were sharp. I don't want sensationalism, I told her. No clickbait, no pity. I want the truth, she said. Your version in your words. We sat for 3 hours. I told her everything, not like an exposé but like a confession. The hotel, the forged papers, the morning light on the ring. I told her about silence and how it becomes its own prison. When she asked what I wanted most, I said, my name back. And maybe for people to remember that power doesn't make you right. It just makes your lies louder. Her article went live that weekend. The woman who said no to a senator. It was quiet, restrained, devastating in its simplicity. No screaming headlines, just facts and voice. She even used one of my lines as the closer. Sometimes the loudest protest is survival itself. 3 weeks later, Daniel resigned for health reasons. He gave no press conference, no apology, just vanished from the cameras he used to crave. The news cycle moved on as it always does. But every so often, I'd see his name in passing, footnoted in another story, a cautionary tale folded between bigger scandals. And I didn't feel triumph, only peace. Peace because I walked through his silence and found my own voice again. After the legal dust settled, I took a small apartment across the river. Nothing fancy, just a place with sunlight in the mornings and a creaky floor that reminded me I was alive. I went back to my company after a formal inquiry cleared my name. Some people looked at me with curiosity, some with admiration, a few with disbelief. That was fine. I wasn't here to convince anyone anymore. On weekends, I started volunteering at a crisis hotline for women in workplace harassment cases. I listened to stories that sounded too familiar, voices that trembled the way mine once did. Sometimes, after hanging up, I'd whisper the same thing I once needed to hear. You're not crazy. You're not alone. One evening, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written neatly across the front. Inside was a photograph of a gold ring resting on a marble table. Beneath it, a single line. Returned what wasn't mine. I stared at it for a long time. There was no anger left, only quiet understanding. Maybe guilt had finally found him. Maybe not. It didn't matter. Because I had found me. When I look back now, it's strange how silence can echo louder than words. For weeks I couldn't speak, my voice literally gone. And yet somehow that silence told me everything I needed to know about power, fear, and control. I used to believe that dignity meant keeping peace, staying composed, avoiding conflict. But I learned that dignity isn't silence. It's the courage to speak, even when your voice shakes. Especially then. Daniel's world was built on image. Every sentence rehearsed, every handshake calculated. Mine was built on truth, quiet, unpolished, but real. When those two worlds collided, something had to break. I'm just glad it wasn't me. It took me a long time to stop hating the ring, the hotel, the lies. For months, I'd wake up hearing the click of cameras, feeling the weight of that gold band. But healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning to live in the light of what you survived. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. No one gets to decide your story but you. Not a man in a suit. Not a publicist. Not a narrative written for someone else's redemption. The world will tell you to stay quiet for your own good. But your voice, even a broken one, can move mountains when it finally speaks truth. And maybe that's what I want to leave you with tonight. If you've ever been silenced, if someone's ever tried to rewrite your story for their convenience, remember. You are not a character in their script. You are the author of your own. Would I do it all again? Maybe not the same way. But I wouldn't trade the lesson, the reminder that truth, once spoken, has its own kind of music. And now when I hear my voice, soft, steady mine, I think of all the women who are still whispering in the dark, waiting for someone to tell them it's safe to speak. To them, and maybe to you, I say this. It's safe now. You can speak. And if my story meant something to you, share it. Not for me, but for every woman who's still finding her voice. Because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply be heard.